today since Peter got cranky and had to go home. This is, if there's ever been a dramatization of why we need to do childcare. The childcare committee had to recess because half our staff had to go get their kids. And now we've got missing a witness and fellow senator because
What we really need is legislator care.
yes. I'm working, if
Maybe
anyone would
combined.
like to, I'm
Legislators.
going to have a bill saying we need a therapy dog. Last week would have been a good time. All right,
Don't turn it loose in natural resources or it'll get trapped.
it'll get trapped.
A really well-trained pug. Would you like me to bring in frisbee?
A pug. I like pugs,
3 dogs, he's the best trained, so.
but I generally like big dogs. My puppy weighs 90 pounds.
Just that.
He's furious. He's a big man.
I have
He's
extra
a lap puppy.
those not hard topics.
Yeah.
Every time my daughter comes over, he comes bounding in the door. Okay, so Maria, let's walk through this. Committee, S25 was the banning of the PFAS in products. We passed that out. We asked why we had it. The secretary said, well, they talked about somebody could apply to the tax department. And there was nothing about what that would cost or if we should have a fee. We finally today got back from the tax department that there's, all right, says there's no fee for a waiver and they don't have a program where somebody could apply for a waiver. You, of course, can go wherever you like. Oh, no, that's a note that got passed and stuck on the wrong thing. All right. So anyway, unless we want to spend a long time, and I'd rather spend some time on local option tax this afternoon. We've got an amendment from Senator Hardy, and I believe that has to be on the floor tomorrow. So I'd like to take a look at that. We can let this one ride and let the House deal with it. It's kind of a minuscule issue. Or we can, but we couldn't get anybody in the tax department to talk to a tax, in the health department. They seem to have other things on their mind.
We already passed that on the committee, right?
Yes, because I had to, had to make a crossover. But we said we'd just make a call to the tax department. If we wanted to do something, we could do a floor amendment. And I think it was Friday afternoon, so. Okay, so Maria, also on Friday afternoon, we got, well, actually, I think it was Thursday evening, we received the dispatch bill. And I think it hit here the last day of crossover, the committee was about Friday. And it's a mammoth bill. And when the League of Cities and Towns who are supposed to be helping opposes it, we really felt we needed some time to get our heads around it before we knew if the formula or any formula would work. So I think that's where we are. The concerns I heard from the League were that we're setting up this huge bureaucracy that would set rates and they would have to pay them, and they felt kind of victimized. So I think maybe we can hopefully help them feel better about this, because we're going to need their cooperation at some point. So let's, as I thought today, we would just walk through the bill.
Sure.
And So I know it's there.
So Maria Royal with Legislative Council, and the bill as introduced, committee bill, S-139, so as introduced is the most recent copy. I have hard copies here, if anybody would like a hard copy of the bill. I also have, I gave you last week kind of more of an outline of the bill, thinking that that would just be a quick reference to sections,
Yes.
if you wanted to look back. But I think what might be more helpful for today, which is more of a thorough kind of in-depth review, maybe not quite line by line, but a more in-depth summary. So I have what's more of a section by section summary as well. That I think might be the easiest to kind of work through, and then we can look at the actual text in the draft, especially around the formula. I know that's an area, or any other area, but this, I also tried to include, like one of the things you mentioned, Senator Cummings, is when you looked at the new board and the composition of this new board, how it compares to the existing. So I have that out
There's an
here.
advisory committee and who gets
Yeah.
appointed and how they get chosen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll start going through this. Both of them are posted on the committee's webpage.
Which island it starts at page 3, am I missing something?
Yep, you are. You should have S-139, and you
I
should
have
have
that.
something that looks like this. Did this make it all the
It
way
is on the
around?
website.
There should be more copies, so it must have gotten held up somewhere,
Sergeant McDonald, do you have extra copies?
because I printed 8 of them.
You
I've got one.
Okay, maybe that's for, I thought I had extras. but- No, go ahead. Go
Well, I can do
ahead.
this.
Jill may be able to print some more.
You know what, I'll just use
No,
the iPad.
Jill, there we go, there we go, there's,
Oh, you had two?
You
Okay.
already got it?
there's two, and Jill will print more for anybody who wants,
This is starting to sound like Three Stooges.
I know. I thought I was making it easier, but
We
it
were,
looks like
we
everything
just have not
seems,
practiced our passing skills. We need to work at paper passing skills.
Okay,
Stoogery.
all right. So,
Kim, do you need,
Copy of the bill.
I can give you my copy. But I do have that online. Okay.
okay. Any other copies we need? And
No,
we're all pretty good. Okay. So let's start from the summary and then refer to the text whenever you feel that's appropriate. And I think for the findings and intent, I think you got a great background already from Senator Harvey and Senator Watson. But just to recap, a statement that protecting public safety and welfare is an essential function of state government. In terms of the existing players right now, with respect to public safety, you have the PSAPs, the public safety answering points. These are the call takers. There's 6 of them. There are 2 that are state-run, run by the Vermont State Police, right? In Williston and Westminster, they do call taking, as well as the Lamoille County Sheriff's Department for office. They are also a PSAP, and then there are 3 municipal police departments in St. Albans, Hartford, and Shelburne. They also are 911 call takers that also do dispatch. But the reason why I wanted to just focus on the 6 PSAPs is because you're going to be talking about integrating the 911 system with the regional dispatch system. So that means the call taking and the dispatching. So you have call taking through the 6 PSAPs, right? They also do some dispatch, but there are 40 dispatch centers in the state currently. So beyond the PSAPs, there are other entities that do dispatch. There are hundreds of local first responders, fire, ambulance, police, right? What you heard, I believe, from Senator Harding, what's represented here, is that there are some inequities in the financing because some municipalities receive dispatching from the state-run PSAP, but they're not paying directly for that. Whereas other municipalities have set up their own dispatching entities and they pay for it and they fund it. So there's some inequities in financing. And also in terms of coverage, some areas do not have very great coverage. There are concerns about the reliability of making sure that they continue to have their calls answered and responded to.
Okay, reliability. We heard about one sheriff that just shut it down.
Well, in Orange County,
Yes.
there was a
So
change.
that's, yeah, so that's one possibility. The other is, the other Saturday night when all the line, actually, we were in here Tuesday, when all the lines came down.
Lines come down, so there needs to be failover, redundancies to make sure that the calls are continuously answered. And also, I think what you've heard about is the recruitment and retention of dispatching personnel has been an issue. And that's resulted in a lot of overtime work, a lot of stress and concern that there aren't going to be the people there to actually perform that function. So these are overall big picture reflected in the findings, some of the reasons this bill came into being. So I'm just going to read the intent section, which is kind of at the bottom of section on this outline, you know, under section 2. The intent is to establish state level oversight and management of a statewide public safety communications system in a manner that does not disrupt or in any way jeopardize either the exceptional dispatch services currently in place, so where it's working really well now, or the existing 911 system. Because you're looking at expanding the 911 board's authority and they're doing a great job with 911. You want to make sure that that's not jeopardized. So that's kind of a statement that's reflected in the findings and intent of the bill. So when looking at what's section 3, where you have the amendment to the existing 911 board, you have the creation of a new public safety communications board.
Who is on the E911 board and how do they get?
I'm so glad you asked. So if you actually turn to page 2 of the summary, you will see the little table that's in there. And on the left-hand column, this is the membership of the 911 board, the existing board, right? There are 9 members. They have authority over the 911 system. So in terms of who those members currently are, there's 1 county law enforcement officer, 1 municipal appointed by the Vermont State Sheriff's Association, 1 municipal law enforcement officer appointed by the Vermont Association of Chiefs of Police, 1 official of a municipality appointed by the governor, 1 firefighter appointed by the governor, 1 EMS provider appointed by the governor, the Department of Public Safety rep appointed by the governor, and then 3 other public members also appointed by the governor. So if you compare that, if you want to compare that to what's proposed here for the new board, which would be take effect next July. So in terms of the members that are the same, so the county law enforcement officer and the municipal law enforcement officer is the same appointed authorities. County is the sheriff.
1 police.
Yep, and so the chair of the board is Roger Marcoux, who's the sheriff of Lamoille County, PSAC. So increased 1 municipality to 2, appointed not by the governor, but by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and from geographically different areas of the state and representing kind of the urban rural diversity as well. Also 1 firefighter, same, appointed by the governor, 1 EMS provider, also appointed by the governor, 1 Department of Public Safety representative appointed by the commissioner, not the governor. And then in terms of public members, there's still 2 public members, but with expertise, specific expertise, 1 in finance and 1 in technical expertise. Those are also still appointed by the governor. Then other members, 2 professional dispatchers, one appointed by the governor, one appointed by the Vermont State Employees Association.
So all the dispatchers, state employees.
That is a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't.
I
So, but I-
doubt- I
yeah.
doubt that anybody that's dispatching in the city of Montpelier is a state
Correct.
employee.
And there are,
Or Burlington or,
So,
yeah,
yeah, there are 40 dispatch centers and I don't think that,
I would say
are.
the PSAPs may be state employees.
but I can find out more about the, I'm just not familiar enough.
Okay,
So
I
the
got that
final-
flagged.
The final member is a public health expert who would be appointed by the commissioner. So, and then there's a lot of similarity in terms of their 3-year terms. They may be reappointed. One distinction though, the current board members serve at the pleasure of the governor. In this proposal, they may be removed for cause only.
there's a process for doing that?
So if the governor changes,
There is a process laid out,
alright,
so.
so this would be removed from the political process. I mean, normally when the governor turns over, they have to reappoint, I think, everybody.
This wouldn't prevent the governor from not reappointing them. They just could remove them midterm
Right.
without cause.
Without cause, correct.
I just don't understand what removal by cause means. And in terms of how that would happen, given some of these positions and who they are. Who decides that there's cause and how does that happen?
Let me just see if that's actually spelled out in terms of the,
That came up this morning too, well, you brought it up. What does that mean? It can be used as a weapon.
so, I mean, generally what it means is if a member does something that's against policy, against what they're supposed to be doing, if they're not, performing the way they are, but
So not showing up at meetings would probably be an obvious, I got appointed, I just don't go.
Or I'm no longer in a position that I'm supposed to be filling.
That,
But the question is again, real time, is who decides that? How does that work?
don't know.
So that's a great question. It's not spelled out here. I was just looking to see if the rules, in any way, there's a general statement, and this is existing law, so it wasn't obviously meant for cause, because that doesn't exist under current law, but it says the board shall adopt rules and procedures with respect to the conduct of its meetings and others affairs. So they might, in their own operational procedures, develop something, but I can look to see what other statutes that have or cause. I know, I think the PC commission
Turns out
members can
you're
be
being
removed for cause,
paid
but I don't know that
off
it's,
I don't know.
yeah. Let me do a little more research on
Okay,
how we spell it out in other areas.
Are these paid positions on the board? All volunteer?
It's all volunteer. They get compensation, statutory compensation. Some of them serve
that's
their
$50 a day if you're not being
Their state
paid.
employees, correct, so they get their normal salary and then any additional reimbursement.
So this one would also have to go to a pros.
Well, it does anyway, because there's a $1 million appropriation.
Oh, yes, that. Well, that's not as bad as child care, 6 million. I don't think it's coming out as 6 million. I thought I'd let a pros fight that battle.
So I will look at the for cause, do a little more research on that. The governor's appointments have to reflect geographic and population diversity. That's remains here as well in this proposal. The governor appoints the chair and vice chair. That remains the same in S-139. You'll see the compensation reimbursement by statute. That remains the same. There is a provision under S-139 specifically to the current members, so those who are serving upon the effective date of this, the current, that they would continue to serve for the balance of their unexpired terms, and they may be reappointed. And that meetings may be called with the call of the chair, majority of members. The board appoints the executive director, subject to the governor's approval. That all stays the same. An executive director may hire employees, consultants, et cetera, with the approval of the board. That also remains the same. That is the
So
current
I can
practice.
see where the towns might be getting a little antsy at this point if they have nothing even close to a majority, never mind that we're giving a group other than their three, essentially appointed by the governor, and giving them power to hire personnel, to set a budget, and then to charge. And I assume if they decide you all have to have a certain type of capability of equipment, that could get rather expensive. Now, today in caucus, Senator Hardy said that the board was being paid for out of general fund. But I assume that's just the magnificent $50 a day and maybe some mileage. So as long as it's not a paid board, that's fine. But if you can hire employees with the approval of the board, in which, I mean, you've got towns who are gonna be charging that if they have any employee, it's the town clerk treasurer. And maybe they've got a part-time town manager, maybe 1-2 days a week. So I can see where that might be making them nervous, and I don't know. We may not be able to fix that, but I think we need to at least acknowledge and maybe put some guardrails around. Maybe bring the first budget to the legislature, for approval. Something that would make them feel that they were not, they just went through town meeting and nobody has an easy time passing budgets. So maybe here.
So these are the people who will sit and come up with the proposed technical thing we set up.
Well, I think there's some kind of an advisory, so maybe.
We should, let's maybe, we'll keep
Yeah.
going, I think you'll start to see the timeline and who's doing what.
Because we're gonna have to end this at 4:15, so we can do, we're
Okay.
running late,
Okay.
as usual.
So if you turn to page 3 of the summary, so here are the board's responsibilities and powers. So a lot of this reflects what's in existing law, but expanded to also include dispatch, not just 911. There are some, and so this is the board's rulemaking authority when it comes into existence in 2024. And you're right, Senator Cummings, when we get to the next section, you'll see the interim transition process and how that will, and will happen. So some of the new things that are included under the rulemaking are standards and procedures to ensure system and database security, resiliency, redundancy, and interoperability. Standards for RDC's Regional Dispatch Center. Application and review process. Standards and procedures for potentially redefining the service territory of an RDC, if the board determines that's necessary in the interest of public safety. And then standards and procedures for ensuring every municipality is a member of an RDC. So looking statewide and making sure that every municipality has a calling dispatching entity. And then in terms of the board's authority, again, all of its existing authority to conduct studies related to its systems.
Does that give the authority, if they decide they want to do a $200,000 study, which is not an outlandish cost for professional studies, is that something they can decide and then build the towns for? Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a good question, because when we get to the formula and you look at that statewide base fee,
Yeah,
incorporated into that are the board's administrative expenses. So how that, you know,
yeah, I think that's
I think,
the height of the concern.
so we'll just quickly go through some of this, you know, that they can negotiate on behalf of RDC, the board can negotiate on behalf of RDCs, they can purchase equipment for use by the RDCs, and do mapping of dead zones, the areas where they don't have access to public safety radio communications.
It's radio, not cell phone.
Correct.
Okay,
So then the RDCs and they have to submit a 5-year dispatch plan for board approval where they report everything from their operational budget to mapping that they do of their dead zones, their call volume for each response agency, training, et cetera. We won't go through all these, but so this is to ensure that the board understands how they're operating and that they're complying with the standards and et cetera. Then the board develops a response agency registry. So for those hundreds of local response agencies, there's one database to know where they all are, who they all are. And then ensuring that those response agencies are members of a specific RDC. Again, trying to understand who's served by whom.
Question?
Yeah, sure.
Must there be RDCs that cover the entire state? Just the combination of them together,
Yes.
must they cover the entire state?
That is the goal, with maybe one exception. There are some dispatch entities outside of Vermont that dispatch within Vermont. So the idea is that there's statewide dispatching through however many centers are needed to accomplish that. But there may be some entities that continue to dispatch from.
Put another way, is there something in this that simply says that every location in Vermont will be covered by an RDC?
Yes, because every municipality has to be a member of an RDC.
Okay.
I think those dispatch centers in Canada. I know we have responders in Canada because fire trucks are having trouble getting over the border.
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I know New York,
You
New York, I don't know.
get up there on the border and the quickest,
Yeah, we do have
yeah,
arrangements between towns along the border.
Yeah.
Makes sense, but I don't know. So,
okay, then we might check that one.
so then with respect to, you'll see on the page 4, the summary, the 911 fund, this is left largely unchanged. So this would continue to be the fund for the 911 system, and it would continue to receive revenue from the Vermont Universal Service Fund.
Except we already know that that's inadequate.
Right. This doesn't fix that problem.
Okay,
It doesn't change it either.
So I'm intrigued by this because a person I greatly respect in Vermont law enforcement said that this would be, as I was approaching this session, hearing that I might be outside finance, he said we should open up the hood and tinker around a little bit with this enhanced 911 fund and how much we get compared to other states. Would that be something to fold into this bill or a separate conversation?
we've known for a couple of years that the Universal Service Fund was inadequate. It finds E911, the TDDY, the universal access, and it's where anything left over is what we were using to expand broadband, which is why we didn't have much broadband. We've known it was inadequate, and we'll see how they finance it, but at the very least, E911, E911, why can't we just say 911?
I'm okay with that.
Good. Is there anything but 911 or E911 that we're going to have to find a way to fund them because the universal service is shrinking, and so we need to look at that whole issue. And this might be just the place to do it.
quick follow, I don't know if somebody would point me in the right direction. I'd love to know where I could find out how much we charge on our cell phone bills relative to other states to the universal
I
service.
have feeling maybe the Department of Public Service.
Yeah, I might be able to find you some information about that. Right now, there's a 2.4 charge, 2.4% charge in Vermont. I know it varies in other states. Some states are a lot higher. Some of them are just a 911 only. And as Senator Cummings said, the Vermont charge funds not just 911, but the Lifeline, the relay service. But I think I might have, I'll ask the department, but I think I can quickly find something that will do a quick comparison for
I'm sure.
how much the funds raise. Yep.
I just Googled it.
Try that.
Okay.
So then, looking at the new fund on page 5 of the summary, so this is specific just to dispatch, the regional dispatch fund.
Okay.
And this is
We're off to
where,
PSAPs and we're on to dispatch, right?
so, yep, so this will include that assessment and distribution formulae. So it's a special fund, just for dispatch system costs.
Okay, that dispatch systems cost, to me, to say dispatch systems, that's the equipment. It's not the state bureaucracy. Or.
This is just a summary, so that might not be, if it does, it is the operations,
It
it's
is the
everything.
whole.
Everything
And
related
so
to
on.
dispatch,
Okay.
yeah. And so it goes through a little in greater detail. If you look, actually under disbursements from that fund can be for non-recurring and recurring costs. So any infrastructure, equipment, facilities, building, all of that would related to dispatch, the dispatch system, both the physical infrastructure. Any of the board's expenses related to dispatch oversight and management, and any costs solely attributable to dispatch operations and demonstration projects.
I'm putting on my former mayor hat. The city of Montpelier, I'm sure South Burlington, there are a bunch of them, have already invested in equipment. Okay, so they've got equipment, they've got trained staff. Now, are they going to be charged to buy the equipment for a new dispatch center in the Kingdom or in southern Vermont?
Best of luck.
So that's,
They have.
these are excellent questions. Some of this is gonna depend on what that statewide base fee is. So what is the cost of the system? So if you have the system in place, you're paying for it, what are the incremental costs that you might incur to either pay for the administrative costs or to help fund where there isn't existing service, or I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I
I'm
understand
just
that.
hearing approach.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
this is an independent board that pretty much has the power to determine what the cost, and is that a Cadillac or a Ford cost or a Hyundai? And they, since they're all professionals, they're gonna want good material. The town's ability to pay for that, I think that's the missing link. This is good, but money tends to be finite. And, okay.
Yes.
And if you could fit that in, they gotta tell me, what is that symbol? S equals something, T times K.
Oh, you're down there.
I'm
The
down there, that
Summation,
symbol just throws me.
the summation.
It's the
Sum, it's the sum
Oh, it's the
of-
sum of.
yes,
Okay,
essentially.
okay.
So I'll talk a little bit more about the dispatch assessment. So And again, just to be clear, the collection would begin in fiscal year 2028. So this won't start right away. But we just want to point that out. Then, all municipalities would be paying. And we'll just quickly, in terms of the amount that they'll pay, there's that statewide base fee. But what I want to say about that, I already mentioned, it includes the administrative costs for the board. But it must be approved annually by the General Assembly as part of the budget review process.
So the
there is,
budget needs to be approved.
Yeah.
So it would go through appropriations. Okay.
so there
That
is some,
helps.
legislative review before it actually is collected. And then, so there's a statewide base fee. Then it's multiplied by the percentage of statewide equalized grand list contained in the municipality. So an attempt to get at the municipality's ability to pay. Then, once you figure that out, the base fee times the ability to pay the grand list, you would add to that any remainder that's owed to the fund, anything above the base, that's modified by the municipality's call volume.
No,
The
we're not.
percentage of the 3-year rolling average call
No.
volume originating from the municipality. So trying to then get at your use of the system. That's what they came up in DevOps, attempt to address.
We're already messing about with the details of how to pay for something that we haven't designed yet,
We have a formula. Yes,
which you usually have when you know what it is you're trying to pay for.
Well, I think the committee has decided they know what they're trying to pay for. We're playing catch up and trying to understand that.
Well, maybe we're roadblock to decide learn what it is that they are. I'm scrambling. It seems like we're going all over the place. We got a bunch of people that are going to make decisions about how the system is designed. And we have one person who has technical expertise about it. And we have the rest of the folks who know how to put out fires, and stop speeders, and arrest people.
I think we can look at that and we will hear from the committee about what their thoughts are. And maybe we can make it more specific. You know, I'm assuming that some of those firefighters as users of this system, end users, know what needs to be done. I'm also interested, I know one of the issues seems to be, this is radios that they use right now. Our first responders use radios, but the federal government is paying to put up all kinds of cell towers to use cell phones. And so that in an emergency, a national emergency, first responders can speak to each other. And I think the first question, well, maybe it's good to have a redundant system,
But
but
I was asking a colleague here what the competition was between Betamax and VHS. Wouldn't you decide that before you start apportioning out and charging folks?
right, well, we're just gonna walk through this now. We haven't made any decisions to charge anybody. The other committee has.
To do what?
To set up and run regional dispatch centers, which will call your local fast squads to tell them to get to 3636 something road ASAP. I mean, so that it's to get the calls from the PSAP in Williston to that dirt road in the back corner of Orange as quickly as possible. Orange is mine now, so I can't forget it.
I have similar struggles. One thing I want to flag on this is that I'm hesitant to support, now that I look more closely at this, to say shall pay an annual dispatch with this formula. For example, in this formula related to the education fund formula, this would adjust for the common level of appraisal. So communities would be benefited by not doing a reassessment or having their assessment be lagging. So related to reassessment.
This is our section of the bill.
So I'd be more comfortable since it's 2028, softening this language, saying over this time period, the formula should reflect the fairness that has been
Yeah.
inspired in other state funds.
So I think I'd like to get us just through it so we understand what or how what we're being asked to pay for is going to be developed and by whom. I'm feeling better that it'll come back and go through, I'm assuming, the Appropriations Committee for budget approval. But I'm not, if there's no state money in this, what is the Appropriations Committee approving?
Well, wait, are you talking about the statewide base fee?
If,
The approval
The
of what's
budget
gonna
has
be
to be
charged to the
approved.
municipalities.
right, but what authority, if the state is not putting money into this, except for the state PSAPs, so there's no general fund money coming in, this is all being funded off the municipalities, which keeps it from being in appropriations. I guess there's $1 million startup, but that's decimal dust in the ongoing cost of this system. I didn't hear.
Who owns the system that we are?
Well,
Now we're talking
that's
about why.
probably one of the questions. It sounds like the state owns it and the towns are paying for it.
Or we try to pay for it, without understanding who's gonna own it.
And we will work through that.
I don't wanna get on a treadmill that is always, well,
Don't,
we'll deal with that later.
we,
Something has to be
I'm
done
just,
with
trying.
first.
This is the first walkthrough.
Okay,
Well, it's a good question.
And we have 3 minutes.
It's a good question because, so for the 911 system, the board owns the 911 system, right? But you're now introducing all the regional dispatch, which has been paid for
we're
at the
introducing a
local
different
level.
ownership.
Well, potentially, how you're gonna, the board makes up the standards, but not actually own some of the local equipment. So
I was
they,
gonna say, if the locals are paying for it, they're probably gonna wanna own it.
yeah, and when I say own, I'm thinking of like the database that the 911 board uses and all of the technical stuff. I mean, it's all done over the telephone system. So,
Alright. This is gonna be fun.
so, and so you want to go over one more time the distributions to the, once the money's collected through whatever formula?
No,
then
I
it's-
think I think once we get our head around what we're doing, then we can,
Okay,
I don't think we're ready to set a formula to do something we don't understand.
okay. So, I just want to see if there's anything else here that you might want, I know you have limited amount of time, so maybe we'll just go pretty quickly now. We'll go to page 6 of the summary, which is the interim process that would start immediately upon passage. So this is basically the transition to get to the full integrated public safety communication system overseen by the new board, right? This is section 4. So you have the oversight of this transition process. The 911 board,
We're just doing our first walkthrough, section by section, and then we'll do the amendment.
so the 911 board will initiate the process immediately upon passage. And then when the new board is constituted next July, it would then take over this transition, right? So you have a transition fund, which is a temporary special fund to pay for the transition costs. Part of the money that would be in there is whatever unobligated from that $11 million of state funds, right? the actual transfer occurs in another section, but, so there will be money in the fund to pay for transition costs or any grants that go out. And then any remaining unexpended balance would be transferred to the dispatch fund, the permanent fund to pay for dispatching. So there's an advisory committee that would be formed immediately of 17 members to advise the board on this transition process. And you can see listed all of those members: the Commissioner of Public Safety, another representative from the Department of Public Safety appointed by the Commissioner, Secretary of Digital Services, Commissioner of Public Service, a representative from a telecom provider, the Director of Emergency Preparedness, Response, and Injury Prevention within the Department of Health, the Chair of the Regional Dispatch Working Group, which is the working group that you established last
And they have a
session.
report,
And
right?
they did a report.
If you can, if Jill doesn't have that, can you
Sure.
send that to her? Because that might be a good place
Sure.
to start.
And then one member with relevant expertise that's appointed by the board. One member appointed by Vermont Care Partners with expertise in emergency mental health services, 2 firefighters, 1 municipal law enforcement officer, 1 emergency medical technician, 2.
And this is all the transition from the E911 board to regional, this new
This is the
regional.
advisory committee to help with the transition. So all of the standards and procedures, everything related to this new system and how it becomes operational. 2 professional dispatchers and 2 municipal officers appointed by Vermont League of Cities and Towns.
And while this is going on, the E911 board is still making decisions and managing their system.
They continue to do that, yep. So what their actual work though, if you look in the transition process, they're essentially 3 phases, but they're not, they may overlap. So there's, you know, the data collection, basically finding out what infrastructure and equipment is already out there. The number of dispatch personnel, spending on dispatch services. So again, trying to understand and get a better sense of what's existing now in terms of equipment, infrastructure, personnel, et cetera. Then in terms of designing a system, technical and operational standards that ensure an interoperable and resilient statewide public. So all this is
We're
all
gonna,
of
yeah, we're
the,
gonna have to wrap this up so we
Okay.
can get that other bill dealt with that's on the floor tomorrow.
got it. Okay,
So I think we'll just stop there.
okay.
We'll get the regional dispatch study, which will
Yep.
give us some background. And then we can see where we go. I don't think this is gonna be fast, but maybe once we get all the groundwork laid, it will move along. Okay,
Sandra, what wants to know if you want her to testify on dispatch before we move on?
no, we're not gonna do the thing. What I do need is Senator Hardy to come talk to us about the local option tax and what they're adding to that, and I guess Tucker too. We will hopefully deal with that one on the floor tomorrow. S25, we did that last week and said there was no fee in it, and there was a thing, what, we couldn't get anybody from the health department. They came back and said, well, they don't have any standard waiver fee. They don't have a program for a waiver. That bill is up. Yeah, so I think we're just going to let it, unless somebody wants to just stick a fee in there.
No, I mean, so my report was that we voted it on 17,700.
That's the report.
Yeah, okay.
We ever come up with an
No
amendment?
impact on her.
No.
Okay. Just want to make sure it was not something else.
Well, there'll be an impact, it won't be a financial. Well, we don't know. It depends on if people buy substitute products or no products or. Okay, Tucker. Let's.
If you'd like to- I have a question queued for Tucker, if you would mind.
Sure, come on up, Tucker, and tell us what the proposed amendment will do.
Good afternoon, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Council. Proposed amendment takes the South Hero out of S60. So it will keep everything else in place, including the removal of section 2 about confidentiality, and it will renumber the effective date to.
What was tax confidentiality?
So S60 as introduced proposed to allow municipalities to access confidential tax information
Yes.
directly through
We
the tax.
took that out.
That's out.
So I thought you said this put it back in.
It was a positive negative. It leaves in the removal of that.
It leaves in the removal, okay. So now Senator Hardy can tell us why she wants us to remove the South
Well,
Hero
another
that
question,
I
though.
thought you asked me to put in, so.
There's another question though, so why, as to removing the confidentiality piece, I thought we put the confidentiality piece so that municipal officials could get information about tax issues from this.
I'm remembering. What they wanted was, it was Senator Chittenden, was how much tax a specific business paid. I think the tax department said, no, that's private
So
information.
were they looking though, were some of them looking for taxes by category, which
And
is what I thought I heard.
that, we haven't changed, but they said they didn't know, like, how much tax, part of I understood is they wanted to know how much tax South Burlington was making with their 1% tax. And they said they knew the total, and they knew the total a town did, but they couldn't tell a town the potential because they didn't know what was
From one mall,
From
University Mall. or
the
Mall.
thing, they just got a lump sum from any manufacturer or shipper. They just knew Wayfair shipped so much in here, but unless you had a local option tax, they didn't know how much Wayfair was shipping into your town. So it was a good idea, but it seemed to bog things down, and we keep trying. But we want to know, since you asked to have us deal with South Hero, why you don't want us to deal with it.
So I think that maybe you misunderstood me, because I didn't ever ask you to deal with South Hero.
We would take care of it.
What I said was, so the bill that's on the wall in government operations is drafted as a charter change for the town of South Hero. However, and Tucker, please correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, please. However, the town didn't follow the proper procedures to actually do a charter change for the town. The town, except for a few exceptions, which used to be known as gold towns have to do a charter change in order to do a local options
And then they have
tax.
to come in and get it approved.
And they have to get the charter change approved, and then they have to vote on the local options tax. So town of South Hero just jumped to a ballot question on a local options tax without going through the charter change. And
Isn't it essentially the same thing? You voted to put a tax on?
well, they didn't follow the law of changing their charter to do it.
Probably going to keep me from enacting mini tips, but
So what I had said to you was, if you move with S60 and allow charter changes, or I'm sorry, allow local option taxes for all towns, then the town of South Hero wouldn't have to go through the charter change process in order to have a local options tax. They would just have to vote on the local options tax itself.
But they
So-
voted on it.
Right, so what they could do was just do a revote after the passage of S60 and do it. And so what I had asked you was, if you're gonna move on S60, then I was going to ask at Tucker to write a letter on, on behalf of the GovOps committee and explain to the town, this is what happened, but hey, there's this bill moving that could help you in the future if you would like to wait and see if that passes, and then you can take another vote on the local options tax for your town. And so
Why can't we just make their vote retroactive?
well,
Notwithstanding whatever.
They voted for it.
I understand that. The concern I have is it sets a precedent for towns to not follow the law. And I don't think that we should do that as the chair of GovOps. I think that our towns should follow the laws that we have. And if we want to change the laws, we can change the laws and they follow the new laws. And I also have a concern that a committee is just taking a bill off another committee's wall and putting it in their bill.
Well, we did that thinking you had asked us to deal with it.
I didn't ask you to do that, and I looked back
remember
at
saying that I thought you should do it separately because this local options bill has died 5 times in the House.
I looked back at the email I sent you, Madam Chair, and it didn't say, I didn't ask you to do this, so it was obviously miscommunication, and that's fine. I don't like the precedent it sets in either arena, and so I would prefer that you take it out of the bill. I have it, Tucker has drafted a substitute amendment. I think it's in my name, but it could be in your committee's name, however you want to proceed with it.
I think the way we left it on the floor was we had done our best effort. If you want to change it, then you introduce an amendment and this committee can decide what they want to do with it, approve it or not. So I'll leave it to the committee on that one. Any questions for Senator Harding, Senator Chittenden?
A quick comment, then a question to Tucker, if I may. So one, I originally had talked to Senator Mazza about having this part of S60 like at the beginning of the session. So I think I might have muddled up some of these conversations as it was. I don't think you might recall some of that, Tucker. But my question, Tucker, is let's say S60 as originally presented was passed into law. Would the vote that South Hero had taken then be, as they worded it, would it have been fine as is?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes. They specifically cited 24 VSA section 138. They just did not have the authority to use that section of law. They would have had to propose a charter change, and they did not.
And that's why I think it makes sense to apply it to this, because if S60 were to get passed into law, it just forces them to have another vote, whereas it would effectively make their vote legitimate if it was able to be retroactive, and this makes sense. I'll stop there.
And they really, there won't be another vote until town meeting. So they'll lose a year. Any questions?
I guess the question that I'm asking is this, essentially a technical violation on the part of the town? We clearly, I think, acknowledge they did something wrong. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. But if S60 passes, they would have the ability to do what they actually did. And for what strikes me as a technical violation, do we want to force all the voters of South Hero to go back to the polls and do something again just because we're kind of mad at them for screwing up?
I'm not mad at them for screwing up. That's not what I implied, but there are, or that's not what I meant to imply. There are laws that we put into place that we ask our municipalities to follow. And if they don't, then I don't think it makes sense for us to then say, oh, well, you didn't follow the law, we'll just change the law so that you will have followed the law in retrospect. If we don't like the process, we can have a debate about the process. But this is just kind of going over that and just making it okay for them. And, you know, I think that it sets a bad precedent for other towns to just come to their legislators and say, oh, you know, I've heard this senator will do this thing for me and I'll just go ask them to do it. And without having to follow the rules that everybody else has to follow.
Would this though have come up with South Hero had S60 in its original form not existed? In other words, if S60 were nowhere here, so they would have no ability to simply vote, have the legislative body, the municipality decide something and then have a vote of their voters, which if S60 had passed, that they could do. Were they knowledgeable that we were doing this and?
I have not communicated with them because I was waiting to be able to tell them, oh, there's this bill moving forward that you'll be able to use next time you vote. So we were not going to move S88 forward. It was going to stay on our wall. And so because they didn't follow the proper procedures for it.
This looks like petty nitpicking, but I think it speaks to the sovereignty of the state. This is a Dillon rule state, and all town authority is a delegation from the state. Now, we have a tradition of local control. The state tends to delegate when the towns want a power to be delegated to them. We tend to do it. And what we could locate a prison any place we want, but we tend to not locate them in towns that don't want them. We don't have to pay property taxes to towns, but we pay payments in lieu of tax. The point is that we do hold on to our sovereignty, even if it's only in theory. We hold on to our sovereignty, and it seems to me the town just going and doing something that is not they don't have a delegation from the state of that power. And to just go and do it, and then Senator Hardy said, to just say, for us to say, well, you shouldn't have done that, but we'll fix it. It doesn't strike me as good.
Some of us are late for chairs meeting. I think we've heard the argument from GovOps. We thought we were doing what they wanted. We weren't.
I just put one last point on this though, which
You're
is
about to present this on the floor.
said the upper body. We occasionally actually are the upper body, and part of that is that we're supposed to be, in the most meaningful sense of the word, we're the conservative body. We're the body that watches out for the institution.
Committee. What do you want us to say tomorrow? Is this an amendment we can accept? Is it not? I know Senator Moss is going to be upset, but he can try the House. They did.
Where to go ahead and do it,
No. It's live on TV. It's
That's what you
all.
want.
I don't think the town necessarily was intending to circumvent the law. I think they just used the wrong language. So I don't think they had the best advice. And so that.
Right, I think the town, I'm not gonna pass judgment on the town trying to sneak anything by, especially not a tax bill. Guess they're hard enough to get. We thought we were helping GovOps. We apparently weren't. I think we can just say we're neutral. Would that work? Okay. I will, who's reporting?
I'm the reporter.
Your report, can you say that
Whatever the committee wants is what they
we thought we were doing the right thing, but they're the committee jurisdiction.
Well, I'd say that obviously we were unaware that there was an issue with the committee until it came to the floor last week. Now that we're aware of it, we understand that the Government Operations Committee believes that they should have jurisdiction of it, and I gather are opposed to adding this portion, which is why there's an amendment from them. And are we saying that we remain neutral on the amendment?
I mean, we don't have any, we didn't take a whole lot of testimony on this. We just were saying.
We just
well,
understood there was an
let it-
issue, we gathered that the proper procedures weren't followed, so we're told, but since we haven't taken a lot of testimony, we remain neutral on the amendment. Is that
Much more.
fair enough?
We've taken some
Eloquently.
testimony from the chair of the GovOps committee,
Okay,
which I found persuasive.
Yeah, well, we sort of, yeah, we sort of said we heard.
okay,
from the
can I
chair.
get a McDonald thumbs up, thumbs down for neutrality? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. You're down.
Yeah, I think we
I've
should
got
have,
6, 1.
You
All
think
right,
the what?
I think we should take a stronger stand this day.
wait.
But no, I guess we can live with neutrality.
I mean, we'll
I
see
would
what happens
like
on the
to take
floor.
a stronger stand on the Hartford second extension, Senator.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Madam Chair.
Sorry.
Okay,
Thank you.
some of us are going to another meeting. Thank you, committee. We will continue. Yes. Tomorrow, we're gonna be on the floor. We're figuring 2 hours. It'll take that long to present childcare. So we're gonna get our first walkthrough on the S-248A sunset extension. I think we've been extending this. This is the thing that allows sightings of poles and wires to go through a process short of Act 250. It's gonna be over a decade. We have been extending it 2-year segments. Last year, we came close to removing it.
Maybe permanent.
The advocates would like us to, but it goes away if we don't do something. We've got a couple sunsets. The other one is vegging that is coming our way. That's all the money that helps businesses. They all have sunsets, so if we don't, the whole thing ends. Then we can find out how long we extend it for. The testimony 2 years ago was 248A has been very helpful in getting cell and broadband service out. There's a whole process, it's before the PUC. We'll see where it goes.
Poles and wires are at 248, not at.
This is 248A, this is a.
Okay, but it's not at 250.
What keeps them from having to go to Act 250